Homeland Security Secretary Noem is laying out a new vision for FEMA.
Yeah, it is one that aligns with recent comments that came from the White House. Local emergency officials are watching closely, hoping the plan addresses some key needs. Grant Green with more on what they want to see happen. Hello, Grant.
Well, hello, Brian and Andrea. And yeah, throughout the campaign trail, Donald Trump teased the idea of cutting FEMA. And on Monday, Secretary Noem said that's going to be a part of her plans moving forward.
And we're going to eliminate FEMA. So we've got a lot to do, but it's all good, and we're working hard, and we're going to make sure that we're continuing to do exactly what you promised.
Noem's comments at Monday's cabinet meeting have sparked a lot of curiosity as to who will pick up the assigned work of the agency, including from Lincoln County's Emergency Management Coordinator, Harold Timmerman.
I'm sure if the state would have to, they could do it with some oversight. And then, of course, the big question is going to be, where's that funding coming from? Will be the big question.
FEMA assists those recovering from natural disasters such as fires, tornadoes, hurricanes, and floods. FEMA set up disaster recovery centers in South Dakota just a few months ago, helping flood victims in the southeast part of the state.
We had over $11 million in public assistance damage, which is roads, culverts, and bridges. And without the FEMA help, it would have been a strain on everybody involved to recover from that.
Timmerman says this is why funding will need to be available no matter which federal body is administering it, because otherwise the county wouldn't be able to help.
You know, if the county had to fund all that replacement cost, or there's no way we have at this point in time to fund that. We're running on a limited budget now without trying to raise people taxes any more than we have to.
According to CNN, Noem's comments have already had an impact on FEMA, causing the agency to pause hurricane plans as hurricane season stands just a few weeks away.
And in contrast to the Department of Education, FEMA is authorized through statute, so it's unclear as to how much authority Trump's administration has to reform or cut the agency without congressional approval. Brian.
All right, Grant.